Welcome to the upstreamlife.com. I'm your founder and editor, Vishal Krishna. I've got people from the VC world who I always love, and one such person is Anup Jain. Anup and I have known each other for many years. He's been a traveling vagabond of late, but there is an announcement, and the announcement is going to have his own fund. So what are we going to talk about on the podcast, Anup? I'm really excited.
So Vishal, lovely to meet you. And I know you from your early days as a journalist, so very happy to be on your show, and hope you're not going to kick me out after this, and I hope get a chance again, because this has come after two years, so I'm looking forward to more frequent ones. But today we're going to talk about my new journey. So Rajiv and I stepped out to launch our own fund. So that announcement is coming soon, or would have happened when the show goes live. We're going to be focusing on the early stage investments and three particular sectors: climate and sustainability, financial inclusion, and our habits as consumers post-COVID.
Yes.
We're also going to be talking about how in 2024, there is a VC reset which has taken place, both for the founders as well as, but more importantly, for LPs. This marks the completion of about 12 years of the Indian VC ecosystem, the domestic VC ecosystem. And there is a need for greater institutionalization, more professionalization. And Rajiv and I are going to be setting up the fund along an axis which offers more transparency and more institutionalization to our LPs. So I'm going to talk about that. But I've also mentioned about that a little bit in my LP series. So do refer to that.
Yeah, I will refer to that. And by the way, guys, if you're an LP from across the world, and if you're watching this, do reach out to me. I'll connect you to Anup. But this is specifically for LPs and the startups. And you should know that you can participate in this new fund. You can already start writing to him after you look at the second chapter, which is probably at the 25th minute. You'll know that what he's really going to invest in. So enjoy it and let me know what you think. Thank you. Anup, again, I know you for so long, almost 8 years now.
Wow.
It's a pleasure to host you at the Upstream Life. Thank you for coming to the studio. 2-3 things. You're on your own now, rocking, traveling everywhere, meeting LPs. How's that been?
Well, this is the most exciting part of my VC journey, which started in 2018. So, I was in the corporate sector, then I did a bit of angel investing, and within the, my corporate career, I had also had the true privilege of being in your city, which is Bangalore, as part of India.com, the first .com boom that happened. So this got me in a different avatar as someone who works along with entrepreneurs by investing, as an investor, but also working along with them to make sure that they are getting the best chance to be successful. So I was incredibly, sort of delighted. Of course, angel investing tends to be a little bit passive, but VC investing is not passive, especially at the early stage. But, there are different kinds of VCs. And I like, going all hands on board, working with 10 or 12 companies, possibly in a year, working more like a co-founder than just a VC. So that journey for me started off in 2018.
Because you're an operator always.
Yes.
You always were an operator, right? And in the FMCG world.
Yes, right? Consumer and retail is what I did. So it was, so this is basically a second coming. And I think the industry is ready for a VC 2.0. And I'm ready for a VC 2.0 innings.
I think you did the right move. I think I think we should set that in context. Don't you think? The first 1.0, what was it? I mean, I think the 0 to 1 journey, I think we didn't have any VCs. Except barring one or two companies that invested in SMEs back then. From 95 to 2010, it was a certain type of VC. I don't want to call them VC, but then the explosion for consumer was great. And that's lasted a good 10 years now. That's the 1.0. And let's set that in context and then go to 2.0 and what is necessary, because a lot of it has to do with transparency.
Yeah, so the need for institutional capital came in at that point of time as founders who were mostly from middle-class backgrounds were wanting access to capital to be able to scale up their ventures. And no one angel or a group of angels could power that journey. So an alternative asset class called the venture capital asset class was born at that point in time.
13 to 14, yeah.
13 to 14. Yeah. That is when the first of India's domestic funds were set up. And many angel investors who've had maybe one hit or two hits, they started to form some of these venture capital funds and invite third-party money to be able to do that. The distribution of these funds was mostly done through the wealth management route. So HNIs and family offices who basically could look at this asset class because, it was a very small percentage of their net worth. So they could put that high risk, high return asset class as part of their portfolio. They were also intrigued by the Silicon Valley. And that is the time that they got intrigued by these venture capital funds who were investing in these Silicon Valley-like startups and
in
founders in India.
And they were domestic money.
And there was domestic money. So 90% of these funds was domestic money, or still is domestic money, because most of these funds have not yet closed.
So in the
as
media,
yet.
we read about all these VCs raising money, big monies. But you're saying other than the top four, everybody else would be local money?
Yeah, absolutely. So the domestic VCs were all VC money. In fact, government funds like SIDBI played a very big role. They set up a large fund of funds called the SIDBI Fund of Funds Scheme,
Correct.
which was 10,000 crores. And it was set up to basically power these venture capital funds by investing up to maybe 20 to 30% of the total capacity of the fund, and be able to invest in startups and see how the next wave of Indian companies born out of technology, born out of a purpose of solving India's problems through technology, which could be accessed by millions, could be created by providing them access to capital. So this was actually VC 1.0. Now,
But were the structures in place? Because I mean, it's almost like it's a new thing for us at the time in 2013-14.
absolutely
Were
right.
there structures in place where there was? I mean, obviously SEBI was great. The RBI was also great. I mean, the regulators were great. But did we? I mean, for the lack of better understanding of this, did we have the structures in place as newbies in the VC ecosystem to say that, hey, we are transparent? I'm not hinting at lack of transparency, but the structures towards transparency, because most of it was single founder led, right?
That's right, and it still continues to be in many
Still
cases.
continues to be?
Oh
Wow.
yeah, it still continues to be in many cases, and I'll talk about it
Okay.
later, during a show. The regulations for AIFs, as they are called, Alternative Investment Fund regulations, was done in 2012 by SEBI, and the funds come under the aegis
Correct.
of this regulation. However, to say that investors like HNIs and family offices were sophisticated about this asset class, no, not really.
Why is that so?
It was a new asset class. It gave a lot of power to the fund manager.
Absolutely.
Right.
In 13, 14, I mean, people should know this. I've been in places where ideas that would never scale, people got checks, man.
So it was very, very subjective.
It was subjective.
It was subjective. The LPs or the investors, they were not really, allowed a peep into the so-called investment committee notes.
They were not allowed.
They were not. I don't think anybody was, asking the question. But if they would ask the question, they would kind of, I think it was not really par for the course to be asking such questions as well. And it was not allowed by regulation as well. It was not there for the fund manager to place these documents on the table if asked, right? And of course, confidentially, even in a meeting. So this was not the case. And there was no such compulsion. In fact, as we are going to talk, maybe, the whole world has actually now, around the VC ecosystem, has kind of changed, because now LPs have become more sophisticated because they've seen a good 10 years, right? What were they exactly pitched? So on one hand, they were pitched the FOMO of missing out, right, on this new wave of tech startups, which are very Silicon Valley-like and which could create great amount of alpha, right? And they were highly risky. They're going to work on new age ideas, and many of them actually flowered and did exactly that. We have many examples of that, Zomato, etc., all of that. The sophistication around reading how this asset class would be administered, the reports around it, what does MOIC mean, what does TVB, PI mean?
Which I asked you about as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And what does DPI mean? Now, everybody is kind of asking these questions. When am I going to get my money back? The first of those funds has not yet been closed. Have they delivered more than the CAGR that has been delivered by Nifty 50? Those are the questions that are being asked.
So the benchmarking.
The benchmarking. Because what they were pitched was that, look, you invest in this highly risky asset class. It is illiquid. I'm going to be your portfolio manager, so to speak. I have all the discretion to make whatever kind of investments that I want in it. So you've actually subordinated or delegated your power to me. So, but hey, what am I going to get at the end of the day? I'm going to get access to this asset class, which is going to deliver 2x, potentially 30% and above, IRRs. But have the funds been able to deliver that? That's the question. We've had 2 extensions, built into most of the models. So these were 8+2 models, so 8 years, right, from the start of the fund,
Correct.
which is the first close or the final close, whichever way you look at it. And then 2 more years of extensions based on 75%, consent. Most LPs tend to be passive in nature, so they don't kind of vote, right? So the fund manager extends the whole thing. A further 1-year grace period was also given last year by SEBI to many of these funds. And it is fair to say that in the initial years, the mobile phone penetration was low. The models would take longer than they would take today to kind of scale up.
So the assumptions have changed now.
Assumptions have changed. And therefore, we'll discuss that in the 2.0 of this journey. But nevertheless, they got access to that capital. And in these 12 years, it's a lot of time to build a sustainable business, right? And it's enough time for fund managers to also turn around their folio, give access to liquidity to their LPs when they see it. But hey, there is a bit of a conflict of interest over here, and I want to be open about it.
You should be. I've seen your journey, and I've seen how the ecosystem works. So you should be. Please.
Look,
Feel free. But
the more transparent the system is,
But there are a lot of people who bite, so I'm happy for you to talk about any which way you want.
Look, we all know about the concept of carry,
Yes.
right? So fund managers have a right to earn this profit share of 20%, provided they are able to give more than a certain rate of return, which crosses a certain hurdle. That hurdle for domestic funds on the rupee front, because you don't want to take into account foreign exchange depreciation, was typically 12%.
Yes.
So if you delivered a 12% IRR and above, then you would be entitled to a 20% share.
So
And
that's the hurdle.
That's the hurdle. And the hurdle didn't come about from some vacuum. It was because the stock market, the public markets in the country give you access to liquidity. They are well diversified. There are fund managers operating over there, the mutual funds that we all, sort of invest in. They were giving you that kind of a hurdle rate by not taking any additional risk. So if you're taking additional risk, therefore you must get additional return, right? Now the question is that as most of these funds, which were open in 2013 and 14, will now close in 2025 per se, and the paper IRRs will get converted to cash IRRs, which means that they are being forced to exit their positions.
And will they be good?
Will they be good? Will they not be good? The jury is out, right?
How do you rate it? Now that you're independent,
Well,
I know we're going to talk about your
I'm
funds
part of
a
the
bit.
industry,
Yeah, so-
and it's best to say things as they are, because it leads to improvements. It leads to people being more performance driven, and it leads to people doing what they said that they will do, because LPs were finally pitched a certain number. The number that LPs are pitched usually is 25% IRR and above. And so we will have to measure whether these initial funds were able to deliver that IRR in 2025 when these funds are closed and the paper IRRs are published, converted into cash IRRs. There are third-party reports from CRISIL and Preqin, etc., which capture these numbers at a pool level. But it's really for, this is the time that LPs are going to sit up and going to take cognizance of, hey, I spent about 12 years with you. Right?
What have
You
you
came to
done?
me. What have you done? Right? And should I invest in you more or not?
They're going to judge now.
They're going to judge. Look, there are now LPs are telling us, and this has happened in other markets as well. There are 3 kinds of fund managers, right? And these are brand new managers, people who are doing their first fund, and they have absolutely no track record of managing third-party money. So they could have been angels. They could be running, possibly syndicates, but no regulated experience of running a fund under a regulator, handling 95% of third-party money in the fund. Then there is the experienced managers, the ones who opened shop in 2013, 14. They're now in their 3rd or the 4th or the 5th fund maybe. And those are experienced managers. And then there are spin-outs. So spin-outs would be guys like me who worked in funds before, regulated ones, and are now setting up our own fund. So we have a track record, which can be attributed to us because we led those investments. Right?
Now, the good thing I'm hearing is there's enough money out there.
There is enough money out there.
But there are questions that are going to be asked about India and the fund managers that have
That's
raised all this money.
That's
it can
right.
be as small as 10 million going up to 100 million maybe.
That's right. Look, in 2013-14, you only had one category of fund managers, which is the first one.
Yeah, which is the India story
Which is
also.
new, and yes, and which is the new fund managers. They were doing their first fund, right? Because they were only first fund managers available. That's why it's 1.0. But today, as we sit here in 2024-25, we have these three categories of fund managers available. So we have the new ones, we have the spin-outs who have the experience of having been part of regulated funds before, and then we have the experienced managers. But the only difference is that the third category is now going to have numbers sticking on their shirts, from the first fund that they actually launched.
So they'll invest on the performance and nothing else.
That's right. Now, a close relative of performance is also how institutional the fund is. And that is a question which is being asked in this VC 2.0 period, which has started off in 2024. You've seen...
Before we go to 2.0, I just want you to rate the performance. You know, the ecosystem's done well. I know a lot of them. Some funds have not been able to close the follow-on rounds in this 1.0 journey. You know, the third fund or second or third fund. Why is that happening?
Well,
although there's again money.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's enough institutional money.
Yeah.
And there's enough banding around of the word startup, and the PR around startup is huge now.
Yeah.
So what's happened?
Look, as time progresses, all right, the reputation is something that catches up. And finally, this is a business of trust. Because you're giving away all the rights to the fund manager on how they can manage your money. At the end of every quarter, you're probably going to get a report, no more than that. You can ask a few questions in their update calls, but not much more than that. And these are risky, investments. There are startups which fail. There are startups which fail because of various reasons, like governance lapses, frauds and things like that. So obviously, it colors at a qualitative level what that performance is underpinned on, and whether that's going to happen again or not. So fund managers who have been, tainted by some of these, incidents affecting to a large extent, their performance and returns, which they might have, been sort of bandying, are exactly the ones which have sort of fallen into the trap. The other part of this is really building an institutional firm. So as I explained to you, many of these, or most of these funds were actually started by single individuals.
Who had one success and then they had a huge fund and that they raised.
Right. So they hired partners over a period of time, and such fancy titles, as we call it in the VC ecosystem, people who lead investments, managing partners. But have they been able to retain them? Right.
I've seen so many exits.
And
the great resignations happened here.
That's right. So it's happened all around the world.
The VC resignation.
The great VC resignation has happened. It has played itself out. I was part of that as well. And 2023 has seen a bit of a reset for the VC ecosystem. Now, partnerships are always based on values. You will even hear institutional LPs talk about the same thing. So what are the values on the basis of which the firm is being run? And values underpin culture and behavior and attitudes. The ability to build an organization, the ability to manage your peers, it takes something. Right? Now, if you've been an angel investor and, you've been, sort of have no accountability to anyone except yourself because it's your proprietary money, it's all okay. But when you have third-party money and when you're expanding the team, you've got to build an organization. You've got to build around principles like fairness, ethics, governance, honesty, transparency. Are those values existing or not? And over a period of time, this is also a very, very incestuous sort of ecosystem as well. Everyone knows everyone through 2 degrees of separation. So I'm pretty sure people know what are my strengths and weaknesses. Equally so, they know everybody else's as well. So people who are joining as associates, analysts who are going to be partners of tomorrow, if they hear that they will not be taken care of, or if they will be signing on something that they will not be honored, so it falls into a promises not kept category, and that leads to cultures which are not going to work out.
It's interesting. And quickly before we move to 2.0, America did it. They all have great systems for the VC ecosystem. it's almost like India is still in the trading mentality. That worries me, man. Where it's single founder and they don't want to do. The managing partner is a fancy title then.
Well, I've written this. I've written about this in my learnings in the last 6 years as part of the LP series that I carry on LinkedIn. I'm sure you've been.
I've read a couple of them. Yes.
Yes. So here I've, there's a very interesting piece that I talk about, and which most LPs skip, by the way. And I've kind of claimed, big one at that, which is 90% of LPs, I think, skip it. There is something called the Form A,
Yes.
which is filed with SEBI. It tells you, or it forces the fund manager who is applying for the license to describe what is the partnership interest in the fund manager entity and what is the controlling interest, right? If you find that there are family members and family trusts and essentially people who are a bunch of people who are closely related to each other who are present in the fund manager entity, but they are not members of the investment committee, right, or key persons in what is called the private placement memorandum, which is also, registered with SEBI, and it is shared with LPs, inviting them on the basis of that to make a commitment into the fund, then, hey, we have a problem, right?
Yeah.
We have people sitting over here making investment decisions, but if they are not represented in the fund manager entity adequately so, based on their tenure and performance, then what we are saying is that these guys in the investment committee, they're mere employees. They're more worried about their paychecks next month than making an honest, good decision on behalf of the LPs.
Oh, I get it. So it's not a very entrepreneurial thing. The
It's
partners
not
themselves
institutional.
are like salaried.
It's not institutional. It's not institutional. An institutional structure to me and to everyone else who kind of deciphers it that way is where there are equals sitting in the boardroom, right? And therefore, they have a right to endorse or oppose a decision. Sure enough, they can be accused of collusion tomorrow. And that's something that is, always on the table. But they should have a voice, which is equal. If you have unequals sitting across the table making a decision, then how is it possible that the decision is going to be the best interest of LPs?
It's a very different. It's like a manufacturing setup now. You would agree? You know what I'm saying? There's a certain hierarchy, and everyone else is just.
That's right. That's right. So look, I've always, been writing in the LP series and in the VC 2.0 in 2024. I think LPs have become very sophisticated. Many of them actually have written to me privately that, look, hey, we didn't know about this.
The family officers?
Yes, that do this due diligence, right? Just try and match the key persons in the PPM with the designated partners of the LLP, which is the fund manager entity. And if you find that there is not a significant overlap, and it's an experienced fund manager that you're talking to, which has been 10 years, that means they've not been able to build an organization. They've not been able to build an institution. So they are.
So 10 years is a good horizon.
It's a good horizon to build an institution. It's a good horizon to, have a fair system of values and people honoring that and you honoring that, to be able to attract and retain talent.
Do you think in India people get confused between institutions and individual power?
Well, a difficult one to ask, but look, people, it's
In the VC ecosystem.
It's fair to say that in the VC industry has also been a great magnet
Yes.
for people to aspire, right, to participate in it as part of their careers, right? Hey, this is the new thing in the horizon. This is the new thing that I want to do. It is hot. It has got this mystery around it. And I wonder what they do behind that door. Yeah, they make big decisions. It's the ET is suddenly full of that. The publications are sort of glorifying all of that. So what that has meant is that people have been so enamored about joining this industry that they have often landed up paying the cost, right, which they realize much later, which is they thought that they were getting into an industry where words will be honored, where, agreements will be honored, where you are participating in an institution. But hey, then you realize behind these structures, even the LPs are not deserving,
And even the founders. I made a mistake and you warned me in Singapore not to make that, but I made that mistake nevertheless in the company. And it's true, it's never transparent. You don't know what's happening.
So I think, look, it's up to us. And I certainly, in the new fund that I'm, about to announce, coming forward with Rajiv and I have teamed up
Rajiv is your
together.
partner, of course.
Yes, we've teamed up together. We want to bring these principles to all stakeholders, especially the LPs, and certainly the employees who join us. So we will take time, to form those, agreements and contracts. But once we do that, we will stick by them.
Yeah.
And we came from the corporate world. So in a
So
way,
you've been operators. He's been
we've been
a marketer.
operators. We've been part of public listed companies, not just here in India, but overseas as well. I think we've been lucky to learn what process is, what honoring your word means. It is not just one person calling the shots. It is an organization. An organization has to run on values and processes. Both of them work hand in hand. So it's both the nuts and the bolts, so to
No,
speak.
so it's watch the space kind of scenario, but you will be announcing something soon.
Yes.
What you've told me so far just fascinates me. I hope that in 2025, when everything becomes cash conversion, I hope they respect our ecosystem and still bet on some of the VCs. I think mistakes are going to be made when you're a young
Sure.
ecosystem,
Yeah.
but you painted a beautiful picture, which also means the aspiring VCs that it's not very sexy, guys. It is a lot of hard work to do.
Yeah.
And we are going to talk a lot about transparency and building institutions, because that's what we want to do. We don't want to be single founder institutions also. 2.0. The central thesis is just go beyond being a single founder, taking all the decisions, try to grow your fund, grow larger, think big. What would 2.0 be?
So firstly, look, it has got to be institutional. Absolutely,
So empower?
empowered, and it's got to be institutional, not just in terms of being projected as institutional, while being a promoter mindset and a promoter run thing at the background, actually speaking. The dichotomy between these two, I think, will just come to the table as far as LPs are concerned.
Okay.
And again, I'm referring to my LP series. LPs didn't know enough in the first 10 years. Today, they're demanding to be told who is actually controlling the investment committee. Who is there in the fund manager committee? Is it one person and their spouse? Is it one person and their family trust? Right? Then what are these two people doing over there in the investment committee? That means they're just salaried employees waiting for their paychecks next month while they're making so-called investment decisions as equals, because they're being projected as equals in the...
Yeah, and they're getting all the press.
And they're getting the press. So what are they doing? Are they just basically being projected to raise more funds from LPs, but they're actually being controlled by a single person at the back, or maybe a family at the back, right? So how institutional are these funds? So that's the question that is going to be asked in the VC 2.0 era, which is some of the questions that were not asked in the first 10 years.
And I'm sure even the international LPs, LPs from the Middle East, maybe in America, will start asking.
Oh, absolutely. Look, they are far more sophisticated and far more knowledgeable, have got far better networks in the Indian market than they had before. So, they're not going to be, sort of babes in the woods, so to speak, being sort of led and charmed by a bunch of, nice looking faces and resumes on a pitch deck.
That data is gone.
Yeah, so they know that they can do diligence in a much deeper fashion. They can. I think the fund manager entity is something that is not mandated at this point of time to be disclosed in the private placement memorandum that goes to the LPs as mandated by SEBI. So this is something that the LPs have to step out and ask for. The best instrument for doing that is ask for Form A. Form A is the actual application for grant of certificate by SEBI, and I wrote about it in my...
And people don't ask for it? As simple
People
as
don't
that?
know what to ask.
I mean, I thought the CA should advise them then.
People don't know what to ask, so they don't ask. I haven't heard
Even
of
the
any.
CAs don't
I haven't heard. This is a new market for everyone. They think that the PPM that has been given by the fund manager is complete in all respects. Here are the 2, 3, 4, 5 people who are making the investment decision. They are part of the key persons. But hey, did you check whether they are part of the fund manager entity as well?
Wow.
If there is only one person and their spouse, or one person and their brother, or one person and whoever, if it's if there's only 1 or 2 people who are controlling the fund manager entity, then they're basically just controlling the investment committee as
Another
well.
mom and pop shop.
It's a family business. It's not an institutional business. Institutional business means that there are equals in the room.
Anup, you have to correct me there. I mean, doesn't due diligence happen at all?
I think, look, it is about...
or is it FOMO and that's the reason they want to move
Well,
fast?
initially the FOMO for the asset class drove a lot of these decisions. The paucity of fund managers also drove those decisions. Money was scarce, and so was the number of fund managers. So people who set up shop at that time did pioneering work. I don't want to,
Yeah, correct.
I don't want to belittle their work. But as time progresses, things evolve everywhere. The ecosystem evolves. As a company becomes a private company to a public company, does it not have a board? Does it not have a chairman of a board of directors?
They do.
What is so different about this industry then? 97.5%, SEBI specifies that only 2.5% of the total capital of the fund, or 5 crores, whichever is lower, needs to be contributed by the fund manager, right? So that means that a 97.5% of the capital that is available in the fund that is invested in startups belongs to somebody other than the fund manager, which means that it's practically, it's more than what public companies are today, right? You can go public with only 25% public shareholding, but here you have 97.5%, right? If you don't have a institutional way of approaching your decision making, right, and if it is just being dressed up in the window in the front, I think that's what we are referring to VC 2.0. LPs have figured this out. They have gotten smarter, and they will make smarter decisions. Also, there is 3 categories of fund managers today available to allocate your money into. You may still allocate in experienced managers, but who are true institutions and not really promoter driven at the back, but projecting themselves to be institutional. Then there are spin-outs, which is fund managers who have worked in other firms and now starting their own funds, people like myself. And then there are, absolutely new fund managers who are doing this for the first time, probably a start of a fund. They're solo founders or they're solo, and that's absolutely fine. They're probably 2 people who have starting and
Do it this way, but do it the right way.
Do it the right way. Be transparent. There is no need to have a reality which is different from what is being projected to LPs. There are documents lying in the middle, and I think the LPs today are far more sophisticated to be able to inquire about those documents and get access to them.
Okay. Another thing is in your series, right, you also talk about, certain companies are not founder first. Founders have a tough time in India, you say. Why do you say that?
Look, there have been instances where there have been boardroom battles, and the media articles, never got around to that level of depth because everybody's lips were sealed as to why did value destruction happen, right? And those are the questions that are being asked, and founders, they want to move on with life. They don't want to disparage anyone, right? They're covered by confidentiality as well. They want to come back to the same ecosystem and raise money from them. Probably not from the guys who, gave them a bad deal, but still they need to access the rest of the ecosystem. So they don't want
It's the same ecosystem.
So they don't want to be seen as rabble-rousers. So I think that's what prevents the truth from coming out. In terms of investors, look, investors, I have heard that, certain firms have blacklisted certain other firms, saying we won't do business with them, we won't become co-investors with them. It doesn't come out,
So I'm sending the right message.
it doesn't come out publicly,
Yeah.
but it sends a message out that, look, if you're not founder first, if you're still, not interested in, value creation, it may not have been up to your expectations. But look, it's the best under the circumstances. If everyone is agreeing around the table, why do you have a objection against it?
Even if it's a good company out there.
Even if it's a good company, look, if you expected 20x out of it and if you're getting 10x out of it, it's still good. If you're getting 0.5x out of it, it's still good. It's better than 0. So why would you vote in a boardroom using your reserve matter rights to make the founders, shut down that company and all the investors get a one big fat 0? Yeah, why would you do that? So these kind
You've seen such situations?
There are situations like these. So in this case, the word does get around, Vishal. I want to assure you that there are no secrets in the industry. You just need to give it 4 weeks. Absolutely. And anybody can find them out. There are 2 or 3 degrees of separation between everyone. And finally, someone who, was not dealt fairly, whether it's a founder especially who's put their sort of life on the line and put everything over there at stake, they will certainly go and mention it to other founders, and that's when the magnetism, right, of that particular VC firm or that particular investment lead just fades away in a matter of.
I'm looking forward to this 2.0 then.
So there are checks and balances. There are checks and balances in the ecosystem.
It is going to be. So how are you selling your idea at this point of time? You have 3 broad themes that you've always liked consumer because you come from that world.
That's right.
Then you went into consumer tech, which is what you like. You did financial inclusion, which was amazing. We've been talking about it 2018. You want to talk climate. So with this story and whatever's happened over the last 10 years, how do the LPs perceive India with these three teams and saying that, okay, the 2.0 story in India will work?
Yeah. So you're right. Look, every fund needs to have a strategy. I think the strategy that our fund has chosen is to focus on these spaces. And I'll give you the reason why, because that's what you're asking. So climate and sustainability, in fact, has been very, very lucky for me. I was the investment lead for Battery Smart, India's largest, swapping network for batteries for two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Their latest round, valued them at 350 million. It's probably the largest, climate tech company in India. Also Varaha, which is working with smallholder farmers to have regenerative farming practices which are healthier for the environment, which lower our carbon emissions and generate additional income on the basis of carbon credits into those farmers. So we want to pick up these themes because, as you know, basis COP28 and all that's been going around the world, India is the third largest emitter of carbon emissions. And as India is growing as a developing market and one of the most populous countries in the world, we don't want to be industrializing and growing our economy while carbonizing the planet. So there's got to be a decarbonized way of growing our economy, which doesn't increase our dependence on fossil fuels, which doesn't mean that we run out of water, right?
Which is a situation we are in at this point in time, about water at least.
You look at any of our cities, Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, we are surrounded by dumps of garbage.
Oh, that's another thing.
Construction and demolition waste is not being handled properly. So we need recycling to be happening.
Yeah.
So that
I hate driving around big cities because there's demolition and construction waste
That's right.
all over the place.
And all of this can be, converted into something productive, which can be reused, which means less of it goes into landfills. We have no more space for landfills. We have a landfill problem in the country. It is polluting our groundwater. So I think these are all things that all of us can now relate to, right? We can't use more plastic. I think we've all got that joke, right? I mean, a couple of years ago, all the water bottles in hotels have turned into glass. Yeah. It's rare to go to a restaurant.
Those flasks now.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare to go into a restaurant also now where you find a plastic water bottle staring on your table. You're more likely than not to get a glass water bottle which has been filled up with water, and you can reuse the bottle. It's not going to go into a garbage bin to be thrown into a landfill yet again.
Yeah, and you look at the amount of orders people make on these food ordering apps.
Absolutely.
They can be sustainable too.
So there's a lot of sustainable packaging coming over there. We have recycled waste being turned into forks and spoons, for example. Plastic is out. If you were to travel by different airlines, you will find that they have switched over from plastic cutlery to to wooden cutlery and so on and so forth.
So do you see the shift happening in India? Tech and climate mix in? And,
absolutely. So
do you see that happening in India?
It's absolutely intuitive to Indian culture. How did we grow up?
Yeah, absolutely. There was no plastic.
There was no plastic.
I saw plastic in 87 onwards, maybe.
Yeah. So we've grown up eating our food in stainless steel thalis and reusing most of the things. They were pass me downs from one generation to the other. So we did not send stuff into the garbage bin unless it was absolutely necessary and unless it had been reused about 3 or 4 times, maybe even over generations. And a lot of that came because the GDP per capita was low. Our economics define that.
Yeah, some would argue that, which is true.
Which is true. But we got to go back to similar habits and practices and decrease our dependence on fossil fuels, which are essentially polluting, the environment.
So for me, the broad thesis for you is also clean environment for our children. No plastics, water.
Reduce dependence on fossil fuels.
Yes.
Lowering carbon emissions.
Battery recycling, maybe.
Battery recycling. construction and demolition waste being handled in a more responsible manner, reducing our dependence absolutely on fossil fuel driven vehicles
That's
and
going to be
cars.
the theme for you. That's great.
That's right. So climate and sustainability is definitely going to be one of the themes around which business
people
models.
appreciate it?
Oh, absolutely. Look, business practices have to change. Even SEBI has mandated and given a deadline, right? Has notified that the top 1,000 listed companies of the country will have to display, a movement, a needle, which will be measured. Yeah, a needle shift into practices which are less harmful, to this cause.
A lot of use cases. People talk AI and generative AI all over the place, and that's for that reason you said I'm not going to talk SaaS. I understand.
Yeah.
Do you think if you meet a company, what is a particular pitch for you? Should they be, because you're an operator, you'd also be okay with a manufacturing firm doing these sustainable materials, or would you want a tech play? And what would that tech play be, if you wanted a tech play?
So, look, tech is there in everything in India, whether you want it or like it or not, and it is an enabler in everything that we do. I think if you look at the stats of how much time an average Indian spends on their mobile phone, I think it's only increasing every day until I think we're going to, possibly cut out on our sleep or totally the way it's going. So it's anything, close to 3 hours a day, right? And
Yeah, it's gone from the 7 minutes 15 years ago to 3 hours now.
Absolutely. And this is just the mobile phone. This is not taking into account the time that you're spending on a desktop at work. This is just your mobile phone, your personal phone.
So we are with our devices.
That's right. So I think technology, therefore, is a way of life for us. Look at how quick commerce has developed and, thrown that convenience at our doorstep. So we are very, very amenable to technology. So tech is there in everything that we do, whether it's climate, whether it's financial inclusion, thanks to Aadhaar and the digital public goods infrastructure. The rails are already there, so we have more and more businesses being developed which are racing down the rails and giving products and services to the underserved. Then there is, of course, what I call as the consumer 2.0 boom. I think we have not realized that post-COVID, our attitude towards life and consumption in general has changed.
Yeah.
None of us have articulated it, but we have all imbibed it somewhere deeply. And that has changed our attitude towards products and services that we buy as consumers, whether it's health and nutrition, whether it's travel experiences, whether it's education and upskilling, whether it's pet care, whether it's elder care, right? Our entire approach to consumption in each of these categories, whether we are a Gen X, whether we are a millennial or a Gen Z, it's all changed. So what we want to do is focus in our fund on these consumption habits which are defining our lives forward. And that is something that should make us kind of feel uncomfortable when we hear about it, but still relatable, right? So that's what I call the litmus test of being able to define what that post-COVID unarticulated mindset is. Because if it is sounding like, children should read books on science and educate themselves, then it's 1.0. But if it is saying that, look, they need to have probably skill-based learning, experiential-based learning, kids to understand concepts like gravity much better or concepts like recycling much better, right? Then I think we're talking 2.0 in terms of education, for example.
Nobody's really filled that in very well. Huh? It's all a bunch of wild...
Which is an opportunity.
Yeah, which is a bunch of wild YouTube videos. Like, you want to get a 4-year-old to understand gravity. First, should they know it?
Yeah.
But how is that? But if you want to show it, it's a bunch of wild things on...
It's been rote learning.
YouTube,
It's been rote learning concepts, mugging it, and being able to answer multiple choice questions in an exam, and therefore feeling good about it. But today's life is moved beyond that. I think the Gen Alpha of today and all of us, we were looking for practical solutions which are taking care of various of these axes. We want to consume less, we want to enjoy more, and we want to leave a lower footprint of ours in terms of climate and be friendly to the planet in general. So I think that thinking, that intuition has come in. We're also become very goal focused, Vishal. I don't know whether you've noticed this all around your friends and everything. Everything.
I see a lot more friends get into fitness.
Yep.
And the right way, not just
Right way.
lifting weights.
Yeah.
Right? about brands that are sustainable.
Yep.
I mean, seriously, is it recycled material?
Travel experiences that are no longer travel experiences
Yes.
that are no longer just about taking a picture in front of some Statue of Liberty or in front of some Taj Mahal in India. People are taking travel breaks more often. Work from home has also introduced certain possibilities where you can actually chill in a location and work from there. People are now taking travel experiences to a whole new different level. I had a founder actually and his wife tell me that they were going to the island of Borneo to do some deep sea diving as one of the items on their bucket list because it's got the best, marine flora and fauna.
So a company has enabled that for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So new age travel companies will not be just about booking flights from one place to another or booking hotels. That's 1.0. That's 1.0. Right? What you want to be doing is organizing maybe walking trips of 35 kilometers a day somewhere, some place where you can, with a bunch of people that you can discuss probably, English literature with, or you can, you can compose your new song, on it if you're looking to be a guitarist, right?
Absolutely. You're reading my mind. Yeah, both things are possible. But I don't get it. For example, I want to
That's
go
what
to
I'm saying.
Japan. And I want to understand how they make the boken, but I have to create that experience on my own.
Exactly.
Not
exactly.
The companies.
So a person like me would now travel, for example, to be with a bunch of people who want to learn how to make authentic sushi rolls, for example, while visiting Japan. Now, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Right? Cooking. So if cooking is my passion, whereas for you, it could be writing about books. From somebody else, it could be about learning about, some new techniques of meditation, right? For someone else, it could be learning about Buddhism because they are hitting high on spirituality. They have learned everything that is to there about India. Now they want to understand how it is done in Japan.
That is an unfulfilled need after COVID.
That's right.
I see that.
So people have identified, I think, much more squarely what are the different items in their bucket list with respect to different things. Career is not a 20-year journey like it used to be in my era or in my parents' era where you join some place and you retire out of that place. No, that's not what it is. People are taking things in short bursts of 5 years each. And they're saying, I'm going to give it a go. After that, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to do this. I'm going to reskill myself. And then I'm going to decide what I'm going to do next. So I haven't decided right now.
So the jury's out there whether it's a good thing, a bad thing, what happens to them.
Nobody is judgmental. Nobody is judgmental.
Yeah.
There's a lot more. There are a lot more individual journeys now. And they are built around different axes, like you mentioned. So health and fitness, I've got this goal on the travel. I've got this goal as far as reading is concerned. I've got this goal as far as finance is concerned. And how do I now tackle it? How do I do it in the best way possible?
That's great. I wish you all the best for the firm. I want to leave you with the last thing. The difficult question, are you reading? Do you get time to read? I know you're writing a lot. When you're traveling a lot, I know that. What are you reading quickly? Quick advice to your series, LP series. Where do they start? Because, LinkedIn is... How do they index it? Tell me that. And what are you reading?
So look, I've been, I was introduced to Substack. So I've started my Substack.
Okay, what's it called?
Well, it's Anup VC's Substack.
Okay, very good.
So
Anup VC is easy.
Yeah, Anup VC is easy. That's my Twitter handle as well. Although I'm not very active on Twitter, I'm much more active on LinkedIn, as you said, and Substack. So I'm publishing the LP series.
It's more organized on Substack, so go check it out, guys. At Anup VC. Okay.
Yeah, so it's more organized over there. And there I'm giving insights like I shared with you in this particular show as to how LPs can exercise more enhanced due diligence as they step into the VC 2.0 journey of allocating money. I've also been, reading up on climate quite a bit. So I've been reading a few books, but I've also been reading up on the Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel.
That's the famous one, yes.
That's the famous one. So I've been rereading it and reading it because, he leaves these nuggets somewhere in some chapters, and they make so much sense that I want to pause and reflect as to where I found instances in my own experiences where the same conclusion can be derived.
Because you've been operator, VC, angel investor, and now VC, and now back to 2.0 with your own fund. So that makes sense, the psychology of money.
Absolutely.
So that's the one, guys. So thank you, Anup, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, Vishal. Lovely to be here.